Hey you guys, today I want to show you how to sand and polish your epoxy wood projects so you can get just like this one, scratch-free finish. And if you do it properly, it should not take long. This board, it took me about 50 minutes of sanding and polishing from the beginning to the end. So that's what I want to show you today. There are a few critical steps that will just help you finish the project faster and having a better result. I'm going to show you again a close-up. I hope this picks up on camera. You can see 0 scratches. And no, you do not need to sand to a crazy high grit. This is only sanded to 600 grit. And you really, when you have a combination of wood and epoxy, it's kind of a choice to make. I only go to 600. One time I went to 3000. I thought that would be better because, you know, you put more effort into it. But what happens is the wood is pretty matte and my epoxy ended up really shiny, like glossy. And then it just looked odd, like they didn't go together because one was more matte and one was shiny. It looked kind of like puddles, like blotchy. So then I had to sand it down to 600 grit to take away that shininess. But as you can see, 600 grit, if you do it properly, it will give you a very, very, very smooth surface with 0 scratches. Now this board is wet because I just finished it, and this is what it's looking like. Without any further ado, let's get right into it and show you how to do it. So here is my board, and I already ran it through the drum sander with 600 grit sandpaper just to get it all flat. I didn't want to run it through my planer. You can run yours through the planer, but my planer gave me a horrible snipe, so I just took it through the drum sander, like I said, with 60 grit sandpaper. After I took it to the drum sander, let me bring you in closer. After I took it to the drum sander, I brought it to my cast iron table and I made sure it has no rock on it and it's completely flat, because it's nothing worse than having a charcuterie board with the rocks on your countertop. So it's completely flat, very happy with the way it is. Then I put my table saw blade at 45 degrees and I ran tiny chamfer on the edges of my board all around on both sides. Now when it comes to the sander, you can use any sander, doesn't matter if it's expensive or cheap. I am going to use my Festool just because I have it. And then for the sandpaper, again, it doesn't matter expensive or cheap. I'm going to use this Serious Grit just because they are a lot cheaper than the Festool sandpaper. And my favorite sandpapers is the 3M, the mesh ones. They don't stick to the Festool, but these ones do, so this is what I'll be using. Now, because I flattened my board through my drum sander at 60 grit, I have to start with 80 grit sandpaper. So I put myself a stack of sandpapers over here, and I will start with 80 grit. And after that, I will go to 100 grit. Then we'll go to, why do I have to 100? Hold on. No, then I have 120. Then I have 150. Do not skip any grits. 180. I will do 220, 320, 400, and then my final grit will be 600. So that's the way I will be sanding. And now let's talk about the settings on your sander and how you should be sanding it. It's a little bit different than sanding wood and epoxy. It is very, very non-forgiving, and there's a few tricks with it, so that's what we want to talk about it. I'm going to bring you in closer so you can see my board, and I will show you how to do it, and we'll start sanding this. All right. First, I will put my 80 grit sandpaper on my sander. And the speed on my sander, I'm going to go all the way to 6, so I'll go with my fastest speed. And what I'll be doing is do 10 passes on my board on each side. So I'll go left to right, right to left, left to right, and so on. And then when I'm done here, that's 1 pass. Then I'll go up and down, grid-like, and that's pass 2. Then I'll go back sideways, and that will be 3. So I'll make 10 passes with this, and then I'll see you after that, and I'll tell you what we need to do next. All right, now we're done with the 80 grit and my sandpaper looks all right. It didn't gunk up much. If your sandpaper gunks up like this one over here, this is an old sandpaper, make sure you change it because this gunked up part is kind of like a rock in your shoe. The more you rub it on your board, the more it will scratch your board. My paper looks okay, but I am done with it. And also I should say, when I was moving my sander, I did not push down at all. It was just the weight of my sander. So I am going to change now to 100 grit. And also you notice I moved pretty fast, and that is different than sanding wood, because when you sand wood you want to go fairly slow, you want to take your time, but epoxy melts under heat. So friction, if you stay too much in one space, it will melt the epoxy, it will soften it, and then that's how you end up with scratches and swirl marks. So you want to keep moving, do not want to stay on one spot. Fun fact, if you take a board of epoxy and you put it outside in the sun, half hanging outside of a table, you will see it will bend in half. And then also, if you take a epoxy board, just an epoxy, no wood, and you put it in boiling water, then it becomes very malleable and you can shape it on whatever shape you want. I was just watching a video on that other day. This lady, she was making epoxy bowls. She was making circle shapes of epoxy, then soaking them in hot boiling water for a few minutes, and then she was shaping them into bowls. So don't stay in one spot. I have a spray bottle with water, and I have a paper towel roll here. I'm just gonna get a piece of paper towel. I am going to damp it, and then I'm going to wipe off the dust from the surface of my epoxy, because that dust, that is 80 grit dust, and if I go now with my 100 grit over it, it will just move that dust around and scratch my board. So I want to remove that dust, and now I will go with the 100 grit. And I'll do that on both sides. Then I'll take a brand new fresh piece of paper towel, damp it, wipe it, and then I'll move to 120, and so on until I'm done with my 600 grit. So now I'm going to skip, because you don't need to sit here and watch me sand this board, and I'll show you when I'm done with the 600 grit. All right, you guys, my board is sanded all the way to 400 grit, and before I move to the 600 grit, we have to raise the grain. And this is very important in any kind of charcuterie board, cutting board. You want to raise the grain. And we'll do that by spritzing water on the board and then letting it dry, and then we'll sand with the 600 grit. And if you don't do this, what happens is the first time you wash the charcuterie board or your cutting board, the fibers will stand up and they will feel very, very rough to the touch. So you want to do this prior to, going to your last sanding. So let's do that. Make sure you get the edges too. Now it's pretty drenched, so I'm gonna give it a little wipe. Just so it dries quicker. All right, I am going to elevate it, and I'm going to let it completely dry, and then we'll come back and do the 600 grit, and then I'll show you how to polish it. All right, you guys, our board is completely dry. It's looking really good. As you can see, we don't have any big scratches there or anything. And now it's time to do our final grit of sanding, and then we'll get into polishing. So 600 grit, last sanding, and this one won't take much at all. All right, you guys, our board is looking fantastic, as you can see. I hope you can see, I hope the camera is focusing. 0 scratches, 600 grit. Now it's time to put some food grade mineral oil on it and protect this board from within. We need to soak the wood part especially, and this will prevent it in the future from cracking and warping and so on. So a generous coat of mineral oil, something like this. And I'm gonna use my hands. Look at the pretty colors. Now you can really see it. And you really want to do that, this step. A lot of people with epoxy charcuterie boards, they just go straight on into polishing. But you have to remember you're working with wood. You really want that wood to be protected from within and last for a long time without warping and cracking. So this is what we're doing. There is one side. We'll do the other. This walnut has a little bit of curl to it. It's very pretty. And you want to let it sit on the board, this mineral oil, for about, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Make sure it absorbs all the oil that it wants and needs. Now, after, like I said, 10, 15 minutes, come with a paper towel and wipe off all the excess. Now, to polish the board, I'll be using some of this Skylar Ewing woodworking abrasive paste. This was made for especially epoxy and wood projects like this. And it's food grade. Do not use polishing compounds that are meant for car polishing or just for epoxy. Those are meant for plastic. They are not food grade. You want to stay with something food grade since this is a charcuterie board. So it looks something like this. I'm using a white t-shirt material. And I'm just going to rub some on it. This is especially formulated for epoxy. I have one that is formulated for wood turners, but this one, it doesn't hurt the wood. You can put it on the wood and the epoxy as well. And it doesn't take much, so put some on it. And then I'm going to go get a buffer. Now I'll be using 2 buffers today just because I have this cheap buffer. This is like a $30 buffer. And then I have another one. And I use 2 buffers just because that way I don't have to change the pad between the abrasive and the wax. So I have 2 of them and use one for one and one for the other. So now I will be buffing in this abrasive with my buffer. And that will get rid of all those micro scratches from my 600 grit sandpaper. Now, before I do the other side, I just wanted to show you how perfect it makes this epoxy really, really scratch free. So I'll do the other side as well, same procedure. Now, like I said, you do not need 2 buffers. Actually, you don't need any buffers. You can just get a buffing pad that sticks to your orbital sander, and that will work great as well. Now I have a clean white t-shirt material and just wipe off all the excess. And now we'll seal everything with the carnauba wax finish. This is pure tung oil and carnauba wax. Pure tung oil will get absorbed into the wood, and it's a drying oil. That means as it dries, it will turn hard, adding extra protection. And the carnauba wax, it's the hardest out of all waxes, and it will offer some good protection and also some beautiful sheen. Doesn't take much. Put some on the board and then buff it in. Then wipe off all the excess. I'm gonna put different paper towels underneath because these guys are pretty soaked with the mineral oil. I do not want to put it on my bench because my bench is dirty and it could scratch my board. So I'm gonna keep it on these paper towels on the foam. You can see my cloth is clean. And here is our beautiful board, all polished, 0 scratches, 0 bubbles. Let me get you in closer. So here it is, our finished board, all oiled and waxed. And I just want you to see 0 scratches. And it didn't take that long. It took about 45 minutes, 50 minutes of sanding and polishing. So I hope this was helpful to you and you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skylar Ewing and I'll see you in my next video.